Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session. It is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. It is 9:09 a.m. This is set to go until noon today. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Joining me in the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards. We have County Manager Romero Chavez and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We have many other staff members joining us as well. Today we will start with our standing item, which is Homeless Strategies Update. And will Keely or Tom? Yeah. Oh, there she is.
Good morning. I'm Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I have a fairly familiar sounding update for you today. The only addition I have is that this week is the Regional Housing Council meeting at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, and the public can attend by going to Googling Thurston County Regional Housing Council, and there is a link to register for that, also to register for public comment, so the public should feel free to do so. We continue to meet with our state and local partners for the right-of-way initiative. Efforts will begin shortly on clearing the interchange down by downtown, and that was discussed this morning. And other than that, we've got vouchers going out with live stories for hen rental and utility payments for September. That is well in hand. We're working really hard on with live stories to make sure that all of that happens in a very timely and efficient manner. And we are looking forward to receiving applications for our hen rapid rehousing and permanent rental assistance applications for our RFP. And our request for proposal deadline is the 31st of this month. So we look forward to reading those applications and moving forward with new providers. Other than that, that's my update.
Thank you, Keely. Any questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
County Manager, I thought there was an update that you mentioned to me regarding the right-of-way initiative and...
Yeah, thank you. This has been, as you have been tracking on the right-of-way initiative, and it was an original effort to submit an application in just about mid-July that included many elements related to the state's right-of-way sweep. One of the key elements was the request to purchase 2 motels here in Thurston County. It was determined that perhaps from the funding point of view, on the operational point of view, only 1 motel we can afford and also operate and manage this. The second motel will not be feasible financially or operationally at this point. So the application included the Commerce will give the money to Thurston County to go ahead and manage the purchase and get into a contract with a provider. And also this money included not just the purchase of this motel, about $15 million, but also include additional money to remodel this hotel down the road to provide somewhat of a permanent affordable housing, not just transitional housing. Not only the county nor the jurisdictions will not be in the position to operate and provide the services that those individuals need. It's not just by housing, also the wraparound services that we were keen on that. So it was maybe a week ago, we received a notice from Commerce. They're going to be bypassing Thurston County, and they're going to have a direct contract with the provider to purchase and manage the hotel. That creates a little bit of a concern, and you can chime in here, Kelly, at least from my point of view, because the initial approach and plan that we submitted to Commerce related to this particular motel provided the ability to set aside some capacity to deal with the individuals who are camping on the state's right-of-way here in Thurston County. And not only that perhaps we will have additional capacity, within that hotel to manage the rest of the needs that we have in Thurston County, not necessarily associated with the state's right away. So the result of having a direct contract with the provider and having the jurisdictions outside, I think it doesn't give us the leverage that we need to address the larger context. And that raises concern to me. So I am going to set up a meeting with the state commerce representative and the city managers and myself to understand as to what the reason behind that decision. It seems to me a little bit odd. We have worked as a region so hard to provide this plan in direct response to the state's request to address the state's right-of-way, camping on the state's right-of-way. And here we are. I believe we have left holding the bag with empty goods. That's my analogy of this. So
with what?
With empty goods.
Okay.
So I am going to set up a meeting. I had a conversation with Tom yesterday briefly, and Katie's going to help us coordinate with the city managers. We briefly mentioned this to the meeting on Friday. Madam Chair was there attending with mayors. And also there is a concern at the regional level because we don't know how that facility is going to be managed by the state at this point. So hopefully, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that this is also on the agenda for the Regional Housing Council tomorrow. So we are going to be discussing this for a long period of time and kind of where we need to go from this, if we need to write a letter or to DOC, but we wanted to make sure that the county and city managers were able to meet with the Department of Commerce first before we proceeded with a letter. And then another pathway that we discussed with the mayors on Friday was the possibility of meeting with our legislators and letting them know what's going on and how this intent has changed from what we originally proposed and our concerns with that.
Thank you. Keely, anything that you want to clarify? Perhaps I misspoke on this issue.
No, I believe you did an excellent job summarizing the concerns in which our office absolutely shares, and looking forward to hopefully making some headway, having some ability to make decisions about how it is operated and who is the operator is also something that we're considering. So I'm glad that we're having that conversation.
Thank you, Keely. And this particular funding does include, again, the purchase of the facility, the potential remodel for long-term housing in a way, and also the operations for up to 5 years. And at this point, we don't have a plan after 5 years. And I don't believe the state is interested in investing in a long-term management of this. So it creates a lot of issues related to this because we really perceive this to be an asset to the region, not necessarily to the states right away.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Is there any hint from the state as far as the intent they've got going? I mean, I tell you, I'm very concerned about sex offenders being dumped under the county. If they can control the whole operation of something like this, they could set aside locker rooms and, okay, that's where these folks are gonna go from McNeil Island, for an example. So I'm just wondering, is there something going on?
I don't understand the intent.
Okay.
And that is the reason of the meeting. They were trying to schedule to understand the reasons behind it and why the change in direction based on, I continue to underline this, the hard work all the staff from the jurisdictions did in order to meet the expectations of commerce. And that at this point seems to be a little bit of pulling the rug under our feet in a way.
I feel like our effectiveness came back and bit us in the butt, just because they gave us, Department of Commerce was so impressed with our regional approach with this proposal that the team was able to really headway and draft something up so quickly and be so effective. And now I feel like, they're like, okay, since, really no one else has come up with something as good as this, then, we're gonna try to see if there are things that we can do. And so I'm frustrated, but I'm hoping that meeting with the Department of Commerce goes well, County Manager, and that we're able to understand better why the sudden decision to do this. And, hopefully we can keep working together.
I don't think we're gonna be able to have, to schedule this meeting before the meeting, the RHC,
Yeah,
which is
no,
tomorrow. But we'll continue to work on that direction.
Commissioner Masutaki, question?
I don't know that I have any questions. I mean, I guess I just, it seems typical or common to, everybody jumps to the negative conclusion. I'm just wondering, it'll be interesting to hear the thought process. I mean, we were, my understanding is the outfit selected is managed a whole bunch of very successful projects all through Western Washington. We're scrambling around like, how are we gonna operate this? How are we gonna, maybe the thought process is simply, let's not put burden on the back of local government that's not really in the business of managing housing projects. Let's go with a group that knows what they're doing and can do it more efficiently. Maybe it's no more than that, and it's gonna be managed and operated under the same parameters that we would have done it. I mean, I don't think that there's necessarily immediate conclusion to be drawn that this is going to be terrible, or I know some of the potential pitfalls, and Commissioner Edwards hit on one, but there's other ones that are similar but not exactly the same, like placement, managing it, people from out of the region, all that kind of stuff. We need to know those details.
Right, and absolutely correct, and also provide a different perspective. There is an asset to the region, and that is a plus. I mean, if we're looking from a little bit of higher level, having a facility where we can house individuals who are occupying the state's right of way, that is not a state's issue, is a county issue. So looking from that perspective is an asset. Absolutely on point. I think we, and even on Friday, I said we need to walk a fine line in terms of, not getting too much into a conclusion or be contrary too much, because they're providing money to an asset that benefits the region. So more to come on that.
But I think, my frustration comes because I feel like short term, sure, like, I know the suit that was chosen by our staff was, someone who has experience in doing this. That's why we chose them. But thinking long term for this, right? It's like, after they're done with the 5 years, what happens next? Is the burden gonna come to the county? Like, what is the plan for that? Especially since it's not gonna be our asset anymore that we're, contracting out. It's gonna be this complete different entity's asset. And I think it puts us in a vulnerable position not knowing the future of this. And that's how I'm seeing it. Short term, sure, they definitely do it, but then long term, I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And those were the same concerns that were asked by the mayors on Friday. Okay. Next, we'll go to, thank you, Keely.
Thank you, Keely.
Is there anything else you need to add?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting of August 23rd, 2022. For members of the public, this meeting is at 6 p.m. today, not at 2, at 6. So we will be calling the meeting to order at 6 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Approval of the Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 agenda, and approval of the board meeting minutes from August 16th, 2022. Any comments on those?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I just wonder if it isn't worth explaining to the public why we're doing this at 6 o'clock, so they don't think anything special is going on and we're just trying something.
Yeah. So this was done because we received a lot of public comment in regards to when our meeting time, our regular meeting time is held, which is 2 p.m. In our resolution, we added language where we may hold meetings at 6 p.m. And on the fourth Tuesday of every month. And so this is the fourth Tuesday after a resolution was passed. So it's something that we are trying out and seeing, how it works out. And, we'll go from there. Is that?
Yeah.
Just
Just a little bit of an explanation, so they don't wonder.
Okay. Next is an opportunity for the public to address the board and county managers update.
I don't have anything specific in terms of public testimony you might be hearing this evening. But as part of the county manager's report, I'd like to follow up with the public testimony that you received from Mr. John Wilson. He lives in 17019 Vale Road, and he talked about some violations that he received and the lack of due process during the violations. The staff had a meeting with him after the meeting, and we realized that those violations were not due to county action, but actually the Department of Ecology is the one who has issued those violations. So the Department of Ecology is working through those violations with Mr. Wilson. I believe Mr. Wilson understood that the county was not necessarily taking those actions. So he will need to address those violations with the Department of Ecology. That's my report on that.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Commissioner Menser? Okay. Next is consent items A through C. The first one is item 3A from the Auditor's Office, request to cancel outstanding warrants.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed these items on a couple of occasions for your consideration is to cancel 45 outstanding warrants. It amounts to $13,014.87. Those warrants are outstanding. They're the dates prior to June 30, 2021. Within the whole conversation, I believe you asked how that relates to the reporting to the Department of Revenue. I provided a response for financial services last week. I'll be more than happy to go through that response again, and answer any questions related to this item.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No question. I think we've had 3 different discussions on this.
Commissioner Menser? Okay. Moving on to item 3B from Human Resources. Description, Commissioners, a resolution adopting the revised county manager classification and specification. And item C is also connected. Commissioners, a resolution adopting the revised assistant county manager classification and specification in the Thurston County at-will payment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was triggered mainly is to revise the job classification of the assistant county manager. The current job classification of the assistant county manager includes a lot of budgetary responsibilities. And since then, we have hired a budget manager, and some of those responsibilities will be on that particular job classification. And also this classification for the assistant county manager needs to be revised in order to hire the second assistant county manager later in the year. So we hired the right individuals to perform the duties assigned to that. The result of that also triggers the revisions and changes on the county manager job description. Last week, the board asked to give you a copy of those descriptions. I provided that to you on Tuesday afternoon. That included the revised job descriptions for both the assistant county manager and the county manager, as well as a copy of the existing job descriptions. Any questions? And I have not received any comments from the commissioners on this.
Any questions? Commissioner Edwards?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
As we move forward on this, how much of a burden are we placing on the general fund versus everything else, including ARPA money?
So, none. There is no salary revisions on this. We're just updating the job description.
Well, even though, but we hired one more position, we created a position.
That particular position was hired, how long ago?
We created the
2
position
years
like
ago.
3 years ago.
We hired back in July or something. didn't
We hired the budget manager, but we'd already budgeted for that.
Right, I'm just curious, is that gonna be pressure on the general fund, or because of the nature of the work, couldn't some of that be on another fund and possibly on ARPA funding? Because, you know, we're getting a lot of pass through and we wanna make sure we get it right. So would that be a valid extended expenditure off of those funds?
So these positions, the budget manager, assistant county manager, both the assistant county manager positions, county manager, they are all allocated out through the cost plan to all funds. So there is some impact on the general fund, but there's impact on every fund from having these positions. As far as the ARPA money, we have a position in the commissioner's office that is 100% ARPA because it's essential to the administration of the COVID money that we receive. And then part of our positions are allocated through indirect rates.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Munster, questions? Okay, moving on to department items. Items 4A, approval of the voucher list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular item is on your department's item, and this is for you to consider approving the voucher list for the week of July 25th, 2022, for a combined amount of $5,583,401.65. The reason as to why this is a department item, because on page 69, there is $4,252.12. Those are payments related to the Interim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster? Okay. Just FYI, I'm out of the office September 20th. I won't be doing this meeting, so if there's any Interim-related expenditures.
So far, we have not found, and the last, is a little bit of a lag on this, 2 weeks so far, I have not seen anything, but thank you for the note.
Okay, next is community planning and economic development, item 5A, set a public hearing on development code docket, item A27, non-conforming code update critical areas ordinances.
Yeah, on August 3rd, Madam Chair, you received a briefing related to the non-conforming code related to the critical area ordinances, which allows for more administrative procedural review and approval for small-scale projects associated with existing non-conforming uses. You, on August 9th, the board authorized to directed staff to submit an AIS to set a public hearing, and this is the item before you. Also, the Planning Commission reviewed this item in 4 different work sessions, one on April 6th, April 20th, June 1st, and June 15th of 2022. and also held a public hearing, the Planning Commission on May 18, 2022, where they accepted public testimony. On their subsequent meeting on June 15, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of this amendments to the Board of County Commissioners. In this particular item, if you approve, the public hearing will be set for September 20th, 2022 at 3:30 in the afternoon. But considering your last comment, Madam Chair, we can actually move this public hearing to a later date if that is the desire.
Would,
I guess my only comment on that issue would be, we don't have to take an action on the 20th though, so.
No, and I believe at that point it will be prudent just to take public testimony and we just have the decision-making
Possibly the chair
process.
could review that particular hearing.
yeah, and I believe there was a follow-up session that Commissioner Mensah asked after that meeting, so it's fine with leaving it. I will be reviewing it,
Yep.
the meetings, and if anything comes up, then, you know, I'm happy to discuss it on our follow-up briefing. If it's not that week, I would appreciate it, because then that's when I'll be out that week.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Does that work for you, Commissioner Mensah?
However you want to do it, Madam Chair. If you'd rather, I'm happy to wait. If you'd rather hear it live, I'm happy to keep it if you're okay watching it on video. As long as you do listen to whatever public testimony that is provided.
I go along with Commissioner Mensah. I'm in exactly that same position. I don't have one way or the other. I want to make it work for the
So
chair.
that's what I asked the question.
Okay.
Certainly there's opportunity to delay this.
Okay, I mean, I would appreciate it. I mean, I always like hearing it
Good.
live than, you know, tuning into it. So could we move it to September 27th? Is that a possibility?
Yeah,
Or the wait, is that the fourth Tuesday?
yeah, and that is at 6 in the afternoon.
But we'll have the public hearing earlier in the afternoon.
You know, that's probably a good conversation to have with the board. You can probably hold a public hearing at 3 in the afternoon, or you can probably just have a public hearing after your meeting at 6 o'clock.
I vote strongly for 3 p.m. Or 4 or whatever.
I was thinking maybe this would give us a good opportunity to see if we don't have enhanced public participation because of an evening hearing. So, I mean, we hear that all the time, that, well, we have stuff when working folks have a hard time getting there. So, I don't know what my seatmates' positions are as to why or if there's commitments. But I don't know, just, we're gonna see the full meal deal if we not only have a meeting, but also a public hearing.
Public hearing.
So, anyway, I'm not locked in on anything.
What's the anticipated turnout, if you will? Is this
Grace,
light or?
Can you give us a perspective? The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this. Is this could be the word controversial, or public participation will be to a high level?
There's more people came to this particular Planning Commission public hearing. We had about 10 people come and testify at the Planning Commission public hearing. It's one of those in-betweens. It's not our crickets, but it's not highly controversial.
So I ask because, you know, if you set this public hearing just before the board meeting,
That could be an option.
At
You can
5:30.
have at 5 o'clock, just to.
5 or
move it to-
5:30, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so let's change the action for September 27th, 2022 to start at 5 p.m. Very good.
Okay, Well, thank you to my seatmates for accommodating. Okay, moving on to Public Works, item 6A, request for proposals for a comprehensive stormwater study for the storm and surface water utility.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You heard this item last week, and this for your consideration to issue a request for proposals to secure the services of our contractor to conduct a comprehensive study of the storm and surface water utility and associated regulatory drivers. This is to explore industry best management practices, which will assist the county in establishing goals and determining appropriate levels of service, and will provide really a gap analysis in the system itself. It's something that I think it was stated last week, like to reiterate, is the SWAP committee, the Surface Storm and Surface Water Advisory Committee has recommended this to the board for you to consider this particular study. I believe the conversation also was on the cost. It could be about $400,000 that comes from the stormwater utility funds. There is not a general fund associated expenditure, and it's a one-time expenditure. It's not an ongoing expenditure. With that in mind, Nate, any additional perspective on this? Or questions?
Yes. Yeah, thanks, County Manager. I'd just like to add a couple more things and just reiterate. Number one, again, this study is already in the approved 22 through 23 budget. So really staff is just trying to, progress that effort that was in the approved budget. And then the other thing I'd like to add is that, again, what's on tonight's agenda is just the board approval to go out to solicit the RFP. At this time, the board would not be making the commitment to actually spend that, say, $400,000 on this effort. And I'm open to any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, Nate, will this look into runoff from county roads into waterways of the county, lakes and rivers?
So it kind of depends. I would say that the effort you just described is largely carried out by staff. However, this study will take a look at all of our existing, I guess, practices or level of effort as it relates to maybe operation and maintenance, repair, capital facilities to address concerns like that, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay.
But no, I wouldn't say that this study will go street by street and look at everywhere stormwater runs off into a lake, river, or stream. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess to me, it's a issue that we're truly not addressing as well as we could, at least from input from especially the lakes communities that we're ending up with contaminants in our water. And I'm curious if the balance is right. We give some of those folks a break on stormwater fees, but maybe we contaminate their waters more than we give them a break. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just wondering if this might be a proper process maybe to review that. And I don't know how that would take place. And you mentioned staff, but might be able to look into it. But I think staff could be doing this as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand how we can pay for 4 people for a year. How long are you planning on this? How long before you go out with your RFP, if that happens, when are you anticipating a finished product back?
Yep. So upon providing the consultant a notice to proceed, we anticipate that the study will take between 12 and 18 months. And at that time, we'd come back to the board to kind of share the results of the study so we could all decide together how to proceed.
And if it was done in 12 months, that's 4 FTEs. And I would almost think I'd rather hire a couple of sharp young folks to work for us and maybe do it for half the price. I don't know. I'm just not sold that we're covering all the bases yet. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munster?
No questions.
No questions. I went back and looked at the briefing because I was trying to pinpoint kind of what this was about. And that really helped me understand and get back, okay, this is why it was, when we discussed this, it was a, not really a contentious issue, and it made sense rewatching it and refreshing my memory. So no questions for me, Nate. Thank you. Okay, then that concludes. After that, commissioners will report on board work sessions. The county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule, and we will adjourn. Next is the agenda for Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. We're going back to a 2 p.m. meeting. We will call the meeting to order. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the Tuesday, August 30th, 2022 agenda, and approval of the board meeting minutes from August 23rd, 2022. Any questions or comments in regards to those?
No.
We have 2 presentations set that day. One is from the Sheriff's Office, and it's Sheriff's Office K-9 retirement.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I particularly looking forward to this presentation. The Sheriff's Office is going to be bringing the returning K-9
Are they gonna bring
officers, Jags and Dexter. And they will provide a presentation, and that will give the opportunity for the board to really thank not just the Sheriff's Office, but those, really the K-9 officers that provide valuable services to our community. So later on your agenda, we'll touch base. There's 2 items associated with this presentation, but certainly this is something worth participating.
Under Sheriff Brady is. I'm so excited.
Good morning, Under Sheriff Brady. I just outlined the purpose of the presentation related to the returning K-9 officers, Jags and Dexter.
Hey, good morning, Commissioner. Sorry about being a couple minutes late. I did not expect you to be moving as fast this morning, so I apologize for being late. Yeah, so holding true to our commitment to our K-9 program, we have the opportunity to our K-9 officers, our K-9 dogs, prior to them being unable to work anymore. So this presentation will be to retire officially 2 of our K-9s. So K-9 Jax is 8.5 years old, and he will be retiring and have the opportunity to be sold to his current handler, which is Deputy Devin Bagby. And then our other K-9 that will be retiring is K-9 Dexter, and he's an 8-year-old German Shepherd, and you will have the opportunity to be sold to his current handler, which is Deputy Joel Nault. And so we're excited to be able to have these dogs both retiring. They're getting definitely towards the end of their working careers, and they're currently working and living and training with their replacement dogs that you guys saw come before you here a couple months ago. So both of their replacements are up to speed and working the road, and so this is the opportunity for Dexter and for Jax to have an enjoyable retirement and go to live with their handler. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards.
Ray, hasn't this been put together as kind of a donation process out of the community towards the ability to do this versus drain on the tax dollars? I mean, I'm sure there's some, but.
Yeah, certainly. And most of our, or a good majority of our K-9 program is run through donations. We have some amazing donors, not just from individual citizens. While we do have lots of individual citizens that donate, a really big donor for us is the Halloran Foundation. as well as Bailey's IGA down in Rochester. So yeah, we've been extremely fortunate with donations from the community in our canine program. We do have some funding that is tied to the county and to the sheriff's office. And I think this year, one of our canines that we'll be adding will be coming from ER&R, but these two specific dogs were part of our donation program.
Okay, I just want to compliment the sheriff's office for being innovative and trying to keep the pressure off the current expense budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munzer, questions, comments?
Sheriff, you piqued my interest when you said that, so we know when our human employees leave, there's real value in having them overlap and kind of train each other and show it. And is that, it sounds like is there something like that with the dogs? Like if there's value in one dog, the new dog seeing how the old dog goes about the work, or how does that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, we've strived to have a commitment to be able to retire our canines before, they're crippled or injured or, prior to the end of their life. So we're fortunate in that aspect to be able to, under most circumstances, obtain the replacements so we can do some training. So yeah, from our handlers, there's definitely some benefit to the newer dogs being able to see, the working habits of the more seasoned canines, and to get some of that cross training. So this whole time period for the last several months, they've been riding together on some occasions in vehicles. They train together. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit to having some of that overlap and seeing how the more veteran canine works.
Nice, thank you.
Hey, and the Sheriff Brady, is there an opportunity for the commissioners to suit up and see how they,
No.
Absolutely, we would love
The
that.
reason that I did that maybe 3-4 years ago, I think it's, at least from my point of view, is safe, but really is just brings the level of training they have, the canine dogs, as well as the sheriff deputies as handlers. It's just unbelievable. I did suit up. I did have the opportunity to experience firsthand that particular service the sheriff's office provides to our community. So open invitation.
You plan drugs on us and let them, how would it?
Yeah, we always welcome that though, or welcome any of our members there to come out and see what they do. It's a huge commitment from these deputies to have these dogs. I mean, they are responsible for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From everything that they do with these dogs. So it's a huge commitment from our deputies. But yeah, we certainly welcome the commissioners anytime you'd like to come out. And I believe the current plan right now is that both of our canine deputies and their canine partners that are retiring plan to be there next week.
One time when I was at LAX, a law enforcement officer came up to me and said they were training a dog. Could they put this in my pocket and have me go? And I was really scared. So that shows the trust I had in my law enforcement. They had me walk up and down through the where baggage claim, and see if the dog was sniffing everybody, and then he kind of pawed at me, and that's what they wanted to see. So I was part of that training exercise.
That's not quite as exciting when they jump up there to try and get you.
No, he was very respectful. He just basically, it was like pointing his paw, he's got it.
I cannot even put in words how excited I am about having the puppies here. I've been waiting for this for like a while now. I know that, you announced that they were gonna be retiring and that you're gonna bring them forth. So I'm really excited to see this and, celebrate both Jax and Dexter on their retirement. So thank you for this.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay,
Moving on to emergency services, proclamation for National Preparedness Month.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ben's gonna have a tough act to follow.
Yeah. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Fema is sponsoring a National Preparedness Month in September 2022. This is a nationwide health effort that each September to encourage everyone to take steps to prepare for emergencies and disasters at their homes, businesses, schools, and communities. This is an opportunity for you to declare the month of September 2022 as a National Preparedness Month in Thurston County. Ben Miller-Todd is here before to add additional perspective or answer any questions. But first of all, congratulations, Ben.
Yes, congratulations. That's right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I had the opportunity to listen to the conversation last week. That was very sweet. Thank you, everybody. With that, you're right. This is an extraordinarily hard act to follow after the undersheriff. And in terms of what Ramiro just read off is almost the entire proclamation itself. It's short and sweet and asking people to prepare for a changing environment as we go forward.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Ben, have you got any hands-on, I don't know, trainings or something going on during this period of time? I know in the past they've done things like at local fire districts or something, you know, encouraging people to come in and see what we're referring to.
Not at this exact time, but I can get some dates for you as we go forward just before and include a couple of events coming up in the future and during the proclamation. We're planning on a very short presentation. I'll probably have one other speaker with me, but we'll also allude to some of those things that are coming up and how people might prepare moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Munster, questions?
Is there any plan to bring the Preparedness Expo event back that I think I attended in 2019, I want to say, over at in Tumwater?
So yes, obviously with the pandemic, we've had a hiatus for a couple of years here. We are looking, and there have been conversations within the office and coordination on how we could bring that back. We don't have a specific date set up at this time, but we will, again, I'll have a little bit more information for you coming up this next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. No questions for me, Ben. Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent items. We have A through E, starting with 3A from the Auditor's Office, approval of the voucher list.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioner, is for to approve the voucher list for the week of August 1st, 2022 for a combined amount of $2,844,238.36. And there is not expenditures associated with the Interim on this item.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Munster?
No.
Okay, moving on to item 3B and 3C, which is will follow after our presentation, which is the transfer of retired K-9 Dexter to Deputy Nault and the transfer of retired K-9 Jax to Deputy Baxby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On September 1st, as you heard from Undersheriff Brady, 2022 K-9 Dexter will be returned from duty from the Sheriff's Office. And this particular item is for to have Deputy Nault be the owner of Dexter after his retirement. There is an agreement that needs to approve. This particular transaction includes $1 transaction. This has been in the past. The steps, and that way those dogs will have a good life after their duty. The same for the following item is for related to K-9 Jax, also returned September 1st, 2022, and this will be given to Deputy Bagby of the Sheriff's Office. And it went for the same amount of $1. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Munster?
No.
No questions for me, thank you. Moving on to item 3D, Human Resources, approve the collective bargaining agreement between Thurston County and the Thurston County Captains Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your consideration. This item will be for you to ratify and approve the collective bargaining unit agreement on the Thurston County and Thurston County Captains Association. Later on your agenda, you have an a closed session where staff is going to walk you through the details of this particular agreement. And at that point, next week, you will be in the position for your consideration to approve it. And again, this later in your agenda today is, in a closed session, will give you the details of this contract.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer? Okay, not yet. Moving on to item 3E, Public Health, a resolution increasing the full-time equivalency?
Yeah.
And reclassifying position 40R01606, Community Health Nurse 2 to a Community Nurse Health Supervisor in Thurston County Pay and Classification Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is a reclassification for a 0.5 position to supervisor position, the Community Health Nurse 2 to Community Health Nurse Supervisor. This has an end date of December 31st, 2024. And the immediate need is the Community Wellness Nurse Family Partnership Division currently has 2 nurse supervisors and 17 community nurse 2. One of the supervisors has 7 direct reports and the other one has 8 direct reports. I believe there is a need for an additional supervisor to be more efficient providing the services. And the reason as to why we have an end date, because all those positions are funded through a grant, and that grant will lapse at December 31st, 2024. So this is addressing the immediate need the Public Health and Nurse Family Partnership Program has. And this particular action has an impact on the salary that goes from $3,752 to $8,687 a month, which is $4,935 a month, or 76%. And the reason there's such a big increase is because it goes from a 0.5 position to a full-time. And this is going to be funded by the treatment sales tax. There is an opportunity that's currently funded at that level, as well as it will be funded by the DCYF incentive fund. There is no general fund associated with this particular position. And again, those funding sources lapse, not just this position, but also the other nurse positions, which is grant funded, ends on December 31st, 2024. And at that point, I believe we will assess if the grants continue to come in, then the board will have the opportunity to extend this position if money is available. So with that in mind, I believe is Gretchen or Kurt is here to answer, or Vicky maybe to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Does this fit with our goals in reference to retention and recruitment of individuals? Does it meet the going rate, so to speak?
I tend to believe that it does. And I think the actions they were taking is just to assess the organizational structure and provide the right structure to really retain some of the nurses that we have in the county.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer?
You talked about grant funding, but then you talked about TST funding.
Yeah,
And
TST is currently funded the existing position, the half-time position. So, and that is part of already the work is being vacant, this position. So no expenditures under the TST has occurred. But considering if the board approves this reclassification, there's going to be a gap in funding. And the department is planning to fulfill the gap with the DCYS incentive fund from the state. So there is not an increase of the TST funds. There just is the same amount of TST funding.
Does the position currently have an end date? Or are they adding the send day?
We adding an end date because we don't know beyond December 31st, 2024, if the state funding will continue.
It's going to make it difficult to hire in a field that is already hard to find people in.
Right, but I don't want to put the board in the position they will have to probably considering general fund beyond the 2000.
Or eliminate the
Position.
position. Well, that would be their choice either way. It's just going to make it hard to fill.
I agree with you, that's, so is that gonna work?
So that was at my request based on the funding strategy the department provided. And this has been a practice that we have exercised in the past. When it's a grant funded position, that position ends when the grant fund
But
stops.
does the need go away?
Well, the need is a good question because some of the, I might understand, some of the nurses are also funded by the same grant. So if the grant doesn't go beyond December 31st, 2024, some of the nurses may not be part of that. So as a result, the supervisory need will go away as well.
And the TST piece, I know this is kind of a side point, but that's because certain nurse-family partnership nurses are working with substance abuse issues.
Yeah.
But that's not all they work with, so there's like accounting to that, we're
They
billing that
do
time to
some
those
time
types of
tracking
families.
for that purpose, yes.
Any TST funded
All of-
position, they
all of
need
them,
to
yes.
specifically track, and that's part of the annual reporting.
Right, we went through a long process to determine the part of this program that is eligible for TST.
My question is, how do we get from a health nurse to then a half-time or part-time position down over to a supervisor? Is it just seeing the needs and, the office and seeing that this position is more needed than a part-time health nurse 2 position?
Yeah, because I believe they have not been able to fulfill the part-time position, but certainly there is a need for provide additional supervision to the existing nurses, and that is the request of the department.
Is the request, because there's already internal candidates that can fill that position?
I really wouldn't be able to answer that. I think this should be a competitive process, I believe. And maybe internal candidates will be qualified to fulfill that, which that addresses Commissioner Edwards' retention and perhaps opportunity to promote within. Certainly that will be part of the process if the board approves this.
Well, because that is, if we're struggling to fill a nurse position, right, and now we're going to be trying, I guess the difference is instead of being a part-time position, it's a full-time position instead.
It is generally easier to fill a full-time position in general. But when you put an end date on it, that
Yeah, in grant, but it's every single grant funded position has
Right.
that.
and
That
someone in
parameter.
a full-time position currently with no end date would think twice about taking a position with an end date.
But again, going back to my question is, then why didn't that community health nurse 2 just go into a full-time position instead?
Because I'm sure that the department examined the structure of the organization and assessed the need for having a supervisor. And the NFP program has certain best practices when it comes to staffing,
I see Kurt pop up.
and Vicky too.
Kurt Harton, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. The answer is exactly what Robin said, is we did an analysis. I talked with the division director, Gretchen Dollar. We're doing this for 2 reasons. One, we have an over commitment for supervision for the current supervisors. So we're trying to do this to balance the workload of supervision. At the same time, we're trying to do retention so we don't lose those supervisors, because honestly, they have quite a number of staff to supervise. So we're doing it for what Commissioner Edwards mentioned, which is staff retention. And we're also doing it because there's a need, because we just have a heavy workload for those 2 existing supervisors. So we looked at that, we balanced it. I share the concerns about an end date. However, because we do not have a guaranteed grant moving forward, we have that end date per the county manager's request. However, typically, because our grants come through the state, we will know by next July 1st on a grant that would be carrying this forward beyond December 31st. And so we would be in a position to recommend to the county commissioners on July 1st whether or not to extend that end date or to remove it. So we should know funding streams from the state by next July 1st.
So Kurt, do you know which grant, offhand, what, is it coming through Department of Health?
It's coming through DCYF. And so that's the grant that we're talking about. However,
Okay.
we do have foundational.
Highly unlikely that they're gonna stop funding this.
Yeah, we do have foundational public health funding that is going up every year. And so we do not know what our foundational public health increase will be on July 1st of 2023. But at this point, we don't know what it is. We just know it will go up. We will have more of an idea and be able to brief the county commissioners by next July 1st on that increase and whether or not that can be transitioned over to this supervisory position.
And Kurt and the board, the treatment sales tax portion of this position is
Can you introduce yourself, Vicki, for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Vicki Larkin, Vital Services Division Director Interim with Public Health and Social Services. So the treatment sales tax portion of this position is at 0.7. So we also have some cost savings that will assist with carrying this position through due to the Nurse Family Partnership Program filling in on some of our COVID work. So some of their hours previously were coded to our COVID funding, which left some extra funding in the DCYF area. So Gretchen is positive that she can see this through at a minimum to the end of December 2024.
Okay.
I do have one more question. I don't know if this is an HR question or if somebody could answer it, but is there some way that we could get away from putting an end date on the application? I mean, if somebody works out, they stay here a couple of years, they're obviously gonna be able to transfer over to something. I mean,
No,
can't do it that way.
when we advertise the position, we must be
We
transparent
need to be transparent.
that there's an end date, that people are, potentially not going to have work after this date. Now, as you say, if they're great and they work out and the position actually is ended, then we usually find somewhere for them to land in the county. But
Because that's a condition of employment.
Yeah.
And that needs to be extremely clear.
yeah,
Okay.
we couldn't advertise without it. I will say that at one point, the county's practice was to always put an end date on positions that were tied to grants. We shifted that quite a few years back to be where if the grant was project-oriented, if you will, then we would always put an end date. But grants where you have a reasonable assurance of having grant funding in the future, we started removing end dates from them. We expect every office and department to manage within the funds available. And if a grant goes away and they don't already have other funds available with no impact to the general fund, then we have quite a few positions in the county that are funded in that manner. most of public health is funded in that manner. So, you know, the end date is at your discretion.
What, Robin, one of the things that we do during an interview process, and this might help address Commissioner Edwards' question as well. If something does have an end date, we do mention in the interview that there's a possibility that the position could continue if additional funding comes into the department. But that we also follow up with saying that there are no guarantees, as there are with none of our positions.
That's exactly.
None of us actually have a guarantee.
I mean, if the economy tanks tomorrow, we could lay off many, many staff who don't have end dates on their positions.
Okay.
So, and Commissioner Edwards, to answer your question as well, we can put in the advertisement that the position will be reevaluated for the end date on July 1st of 2023.
No, we really shouldn't do that. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just continue with the same practice, I believe. If there is any reason you find that difficulty to find this particular position with an end date, then we'll revisit that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Two department items from Emergency Services, item 4A, FEMA Public Assistance Grant Agreement D22-255, funding for January 2022 flood response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe a couple of weeks ago, you approved a similar agreement with FEMA for the county to access funding. In that case was in response to the 2020 flooding in the Squally area. This particular agreement is similar in terms of the county be able to request reimbursement in terms of the response for the December 26, 2021 through January 15, 2022 flooding. This is the recent flooding. There is in order for getting to an agreement with FEMA, there has to be a presidential declaration, which that has occurred. And with presidential declaration brings money, and FEMA is the one who issues the money. There's always on a reimbursable basis. We have to go through the process of determining what activities can qualify for the response, but certainly we'll make the best of our abilities to secure as much money back to the county as a result of the response that we did on the early in the year. This has a 90% federal funds and requires 10% match, and 5% of this match is coming from the state. Ben?
I think that's a wonderful explanation. I will reiterate, I know this looks very similar to the one that you approved a couple of weeks ago. This is for the 2022 floods, just to reiterate that. And the additional piece is that it extends from December 26th through January 15th, which is before the January flooding. But just as a reminder, remember that the snow event that preceded it was captured in that time frame. And so it was the snow event that led into the atmospheric river and then the flooding. And so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Munzer?
No.
Okay, I don't have questions. Thank you, Ben. Public Health and Social Services, item 5A, approval of amendment number 6 to Washington State Department of Health 2022 through 2024 consolidated contract number CLH 31030.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a matter of background, back in January 2022, the board approved what we call as the consolidated contract with the state. And that created an umbrella for us to secure funding as they become available. Over the last few months, we have approved amendments. They have related to this consolidated contract, also known as the CON. In this particular item, for you to consider amendment number 6. They will bring an additional $2,645,000 to this contract with a total amount of $11,993,056. This particular amendment number 6 has specifically a scope of work that includes functional public health services, and that is broad in perspective. And Kurt is here to answer any questions or provide additional perspective. Kurt?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Again, Kurt Harden, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. This is a funding that has come in as of July 1st from the Department of Health, and we anticipate additional amendments on the con as more funding comes through the Department of Health through December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Meister? Okay, thank you, Kurt. Moving on to Public Works, item 6A, master interlocal agreement with Mason County for transportation services.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is for your consideration of renewal of a contract. And this is for coordinate services between Thurston County and Mason County. The current cooperative agreement was signed in 2017, and recently has expired. And this is a good instrument as to how we can share expertise, equipment, and activities among the jurisdictions. This is a long-standing successful contract, and for your consideration is to approve this interlocal agreement with Mason County Public Works. There is on a reimbursable basis depending on the services that we secure from each of the counties. And Matt is here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, keep up the good work, Matt.
Questions, Commissioner Meister?
What kinds of stuff are we providing?
So for instance, we provide corporate payment and striping, pothole patching, guardrail repairs, that type of public works related to roadways. Some instances, Mason County may not have materials available to do the road, so we may have it and we work with them. And vice versa, we may not have materials available to us, and Mason County may have staff or materials. And this cooperative agreement will allow us to freely share resources.
Okay.
It's kind of a mutual aid agreement, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a good term. Thank you.
I think this is great. Matt, could you give us some examples where kind of this has gone, we've used this?
Yeah, we actually have similar contracts with all of the cities in the region. So a good example is the city of Olympia has, 75 traffic signals. We in the county only have 12 signals. So it doesn't really make sense for us to have staff to maintain 12 signals when it's much more efficient to contract with the city of Olympia to maintain those signals for us. Another example is, I think you're all aware that we help the cities with striping in summer times. We help the city of Bakota with pavement markings. So it's really a beneficial thing for not just the county, but other agencies as well, especially the smaller agencies that may not have the resources that we have.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 6B, approve quality controls corporation as single source SCADA integrator and equipment provider for solid waste pumps, upgrades and improvements project, CP number 91717.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Waste and Recovery Center, we have pumps that deals with the stormwater, mainly related to the leachate ponds that we have as part of processing and maintaining the closed landfill. There is a need to bring this to the supervisory control and data SCADA, I think it is, and to monitor the flows of the pumps, as well as having a comprehensive overview of the system in coordination with the rest of the systems that we have in place. I think you're familiar with this particular system, this SCADA, and this is something that comprehensively we're going to be using the system to manage all the many infrastructures that we have here, particularly in public works. So this particular request is for you to consider a sole source to have this work done by the Quality Controls Corporation for the amount of not to exceed $100,000. And the Quality Control Corporation is the outfit who manages and provides the services on this SCADA system itself. During the process of assessing whether it's a sole source, the Thurston County Internal Auditor goes through the process and reviewing the justification by the department. In this particular case, the Internal Auditor has concurred that this is a sole source, and this is why it's coming for your consideration. Rick?
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Thomas with Public Works. Just to add a couple of things to what Romero mentioned, one of the primary reasons for needing this single source authority is that QCC is the integrator as a part of the SCADA project that's presently going on. And in order to make sure that we have complete system operability between the SCADA, which is our control and monitoring system, and the control of the new pump systems that we're installing at this point, there are customized panels and unique proprietary software that needs to be programmed into the system in order for the pumps to actually be controlled, and then data processed through the actual SCADA system itself. And so this is not unique in the industry. The SCADA type projects typically do require a specialized integrator, and that's what QCC is. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Rick. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munzer? Okay. Moving on to item 6C, set a public hearing to consider revising the speed limit schedule for various county roads.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You received a briefing, I believe, last week, where staff and Public Works presented a proposal to revise the speed limits on 8 segments of county roadways. I believe the board provided direction to bring up an AIS for you to consider setting a public hearing for you to receive all the testimony before taking an action or not on this particular request. If the board approves, the public hearing will be held on October 4th, 2022 at 3:30 in the afternoon in this building. And as is customary, you will have the option to close the public hearing. And also you have the options not just to approve as a whole, you can reject any specific segments or approve them all, reject them all. You have quite a bit of latitude depending on the public testimony. You may take an action on those 8 particular locations. Matt?
Matt, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, good morning. Matt Huntsman, Thurston County Traffic Engineer. I also wanted to make sure that you received the additional information requested from us at the briefing, specifically regarding how we respond to service requests, some collision history, and then whether or not it was initiated by internal staff or by citizen service requests.
Yeah, that was submitted last week, so thank you for the prompt response.
No problem.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munzer? No questions for me. After that, we will review our standing items, and we have 2 public hearings starting at 3:30. The first one is Community Planning and Economic Development, public hearing 2022 Space Tax Program application. Is it open space tax?
Yeah, it's open space tax
So
program.
can we add the open after?
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, you received a briefing on July 14, 2022 related to an application for a particular property to get into the open space tax program that is administered by the Board of County Commissioners. There is 2 open space programs. One is managed by the assessor of county assessor and has any specific requirements within. the other space, open space program, or manages is this particular request. This is known as the George application. The open space has significant wildlife habitat and resource enhancement categories. The staff has reviewed and determined that this parcel is eligible for 4 points under the Thurston County Public Benefit Rating System, qualifying for 12.2 acres, or the 13.12 acres to potentially have a 50% reduction on value, as well as the property tax calculations. Before the board considers taking an action, you need to hold a public hearing just to make sure that you receive public testimony, because the nuances of this particular program is when a particular applicant in a particular property has a reduction on property taxes, that reduction needs to be distributed within the taxing district. And so at the end of the day, there is not a negative effect to county revenues. And that is, I believe, the main intent of you receiving public testimony. And we have Marissa here to answer any questions.
Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Is there any chance that you could give an example of the minimal impact to the surrounding taxpayers? Is there, I mean, it's pretty minimal if I remember right.
It's pretty minimal because it's distributed among all the ratepayers in the district. So I would not be able to give you a number.
How big is the district that would be you're referring to?
I won't be able to answer that question.
But it's generally
Maybe
not
staff,
much.
maybe staff has an answer to that. Chris or Marissa?
No, we don't have an answer to that. We would have to contact the assessor's office to find out that information, but it can be determined.
I would think if we could give just an example of the minute change, might make it
Maybe
easier.
if the board considers setting the public hearing, that will be part of the staff's presentation at the public
Yeah,
hearing.
there you go.
Would that work?
Yep. Would for me.
Okay.
Would that work, Chris, Marissa?
We can work with the assessor's office to provide some of that information during our presentation, yes.
And I don't think it has to be very extensive. Just a very, an example maybe of a homeowner in that district. And how big the district is. I never have had a good understanding of the districts and the way they're laid out.
Thank you. Commissioner Matzer, questions?
No.
Okay.
And you do have, I just want to clarify, you have two options, potential actions for you is to close the public hearing. And as is customary, depending on the subjects, you have an option to approve the application depending on the public testimony. You're not necessarily required to do so, it just is an option that we provide to the board based on the public testimony.
Okay, thank you. Our commissioners, for the time being, of course, that may change with public comment, but having the two actions there.
Yeah, well, that's okay with me.
Okay.
Maybe one clarification, one question, and I don't know if staff has the answer right now, but it seems to me if someone opts out because they want to do something different somewhere down the line, isn't there a 7-year penalty or something that's assessed? Does that make sense?
So yeah, the assessor's office, the open space program does have a penalty for those that withdraw from the program and those that withdraw from the program early. So it would be 7 years of back taxes. And the assessor's office has more information on that online.
I mean, I guess it's just so we can point out to the rest of the citizens, it's not an automatic freebie or anything like that. There's a dual benefit here for the environment, for an example, and everybody's paying their own way still if things change. So.
Absolutely. There is an incentive to stay within the program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a second public hearing, and that is public hearing for 6-year transportation improvement program for the calendar years 2023 through 2028.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The department presented to the board officially the Transportation Improvement Program for the years you described, 2023, 2028. And this is under RCW requirement 36.81. The next step in the process is for you taking public testimony related to this particular program that includes many projects in the county, as well as the financial strategies to how we're going to fund those projects in the next 6 years. At this point, you only have one option for your consideration, one action: move to close the public hearing. We'll eliminate the rest of the language on the motion, and the actual consideration for approving is going to be on the day, I believe it's December 16th, where the board approves the overall budget. It is systematic. The capital facilities plan needs to be approved. The transportation improvement program needs to be approved by the board, followed by the approval of the budget. That consecutive process is pretty well outlined in the state law, I believe. So, but again, you need to hold a public hearing, and we're trying to be proactive as to when the public hearing should occur, which right now is next week. So, the only action that I will ask the board is to close the public hearing. Scott.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Scott Lindblom, County Engineer with Public Works. The County Manager summarized it fairly well. We did present this information to you on July 11th of this year. We have had the public hearing posted. It was advertised in the Olympian on the 28th of July and the 4th of August. In addition, it's been available to the local tribes, the DOT, JBLM, County Road Board, and quite a few other groups with a notice of the hearing and link mailed directly to those cities and those other jurisdictions as well. And thus far, we have received no comments.
Thank you. Question, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser? No, none from me either. Thank you, Scott. That would conclude our agenda for our meeting on August 30th, 2022. We'll go ahead and get through our next items, and then we'll take a break. So next, proclamations and awards and advisory boards and commissions. Jamie?
Good morning, Jamie Caldwell, Clerk of the Board. As previously mentioned, included in your packet is the National Preparedness Month draft proclamation for next Tuesday. For boards and commissions, I've included the 2 applications for appointment to the Historic Commission and the 1 application for appointment to the non-farmer position on the Agricultural Advisory Committee. I'm still waiting for a recommendation response from that committee on that application. The ones for the Historic Commission have been recommended for appointment. But both that last application is there for your review until I have that recommendation from the Ag Committee. Outside of that, or outside of any questions, that's all I've got.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
So, are we doing something with the Historic Commission or not?
If you're ready. I reviewed their applications. I was going to recommend that they be added on our agenda to approve, but I'm not sure if anyone else needs more time. You good with it?
Yes.
So if we have this appointments for next week, would that work? Thank you.
You're okay with that? You said yes?
Mhm.
Next is our PIO check-in. Megan?
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. The only update I have for you today is I am currently working on a communications plan and website to host information about the 3 to 5 commissioner ballot measure. And so I hope to have that at least finalized to post early next week. So that's coming. Pending any questions, that's what I have for you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Where are we at on the work that Art's doing? Maybe is he doing work with you folks on the website and that type of thing?
I don't know what you're talking about specifically.
Trying to,
Are you talking about the website project?
yeah.
Yeah, we can provide another.
Yeah, the website project for the county website redesign is still on track to go live in February of 2023. We're working with all of the web coordinators and the contractor to keep that moving forward.
I thought you were talking about Auditor for a little bit. I was like.
Oh.
Oh, that's what I thought you were talking about as well.
No, RTM.
Different.
Oh, RTM.
RTM.
Yeah.
Okay, his name's RTM. That's why I didn't understand.
Yeah, he said
Oh.
art, you know, but when I see him in the hall, that's what he said, "Hey, I go by art."
Yeah.
Yeah, he is continuing to help with the project, yes.
And so everything's going right along, small, we're on schedule.
Yes, yes.
And then every once in a while, you give us, you know, numbers about viewing and stuff like that. You have that? And
I will have that prepared for next week, and
Okay,
I will give
that's
you
fine.
an update on our numbers. We
Just
haven't done that for a while, so.
How it's going. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Wentz, questions?
I didn't hear what you said about the 5 commissioners, so something's coming.
Yeah, I'm working on a communications plan and a webpage to host information about it. So that will be coming soon.
Okay, that's what I missed.
Okay, no questions for me. Thank you, Megan. There's nothing for briefing and public hearing decisions pending. We have several commissioner items, which we'll pick up right after our 15-minute break. Thank you. It's really,
You're live.
we are back from break. It is 10:57 a.m. And we are back with commissioners' items. And the first one is redistricting update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just to provide an update, and I'm planning to bring this item periodic basis just to inform the entire board on some of the steps that we have taken. As you're tracking, this particular proposition is going to be on the ballot on this November general election, where the voters of Thurston County will approve or not, moving from 3 commissioners to 5 commissioners representation. But also, during this process, we signed a joint resolution last November, December 8th, 2021, with the Port of Olympia. Within that resolution, agrees to move forward and develop a redistricting committee to start looking as to how the boundaries will be laid out if the voters approve moving to 5 commissioners. The redistrict committee is very specific on the joint resolution, which outlines the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, as well as the chair of the Port of Olympia, will be the voting members, as well as the county auditor will be. The county auditor will be as a resource to this effort. We have formed a team that includes as the 3 elected officials that I just mentioned, as well as the executive director from the port, myself, and the legal counsel from the Port of Olympia, as well as the Thurston County Port Commissioner's Office, in this case Elizabeth, as well as staff from the auditor's office, the election side, as well as the geodata staff. They will help us on the mapping. 2 weeks ago, we held the first kickoff meeting with the redistricting committee, which we outlined, what the main objectives that we needed to achieve as a result of this particular effort. And let me read those objectives that we discussed at that time. And those objectives are certainly up for discussion. And if there's any additional perspective on the objectives you'd like to achieve, certainly let me know and we can incorporate, because the next meeting is this Friday in the afternoon. So the larger objectives that we discussed will be obviously achieve equal population number by district at about 60,000 per district. The actual number is 60,100, and we did have a discussion in terms of what will be the acceptable deviation. And the group concluded that perhaps 200 will be a good deviation to achieve, knowingly that each of the districts will not get to that point of 60,100. So a 200 population deviation may be an acceptable number. This is objectives as to what we're going through. The next will be maintain the current commissioners on their elected districts. That has to be an objective, of course.
And your district is the most complicated, or the long one, just because.
Where do you live?
Yeah, Commissioner Bob Ayala lives by Johnson Point, and then you live, of course, like closer to this.
They both live in the far east, so.
So it's gonna be a long kind of district.
Yeah. So the next objective is to follow precinct lines in avoiding splitting precincts. Also, the objective is to have compact and contiguous as possible all the areas of the new districts, maintain communities of mutual interest, and obviously no gerrymandering as a result of this redistricting. We also revised the timelines similar to what you have seen in the past. We add another option just to allow, in case you receive testimony during the public hearing, and includes an additional meeting by the redistricting committee to assess the public comments and to see if there is any modifications that needs to be done. But still, the approval dates are within December timeframe. It will allow us to submit the approved boundaries to the county auditor by December 19th. That is the objective in terms of the timelines. Also, at the meeting, I provided with a proposal to begin the conversation. And our proposal, it was mainly for me intended to find a way to begin the conversation.
I wish we could have taken a picture of it. So,
Yeah, I wish I could take a
yeah,
picture.
because it's like hard to explain. But it was kind of like a good starting point just to get the conversation started. GIS is gonna come. Another proposal from Auditor Hull was like, well, can we just split kind of like South County, like, you know, on a vertical line or horizontal line and
No.
and
I answered that question for you.
and so GIS is going to come back with a couple proposals, and I think the hardest part is going to be, again, that population, keeping that 60,000 into with each district, just because with South County it looks like a big area, right? But then those populations are kind of low, you know, and you know, there's 30 and it's this huge wide area. So it's still, I don't think, still gonna cover a mass of area, and it's still gonna have to go into either southern Tumwater or Olympia or Lacey. Another thing that GIS staff is doing is, you know, we have a general idea where each commissioner lived, and so GIS is actually going to put a dot on the precinct, not your actual address, just because, you know, safety concerns. And so on each one of the precincts, kind of where each commissioner lives, so we know kind of, you know, how to draw around them. So that was the discussion that we had on Friday. The meeting, we decided it was going to be every 2 weeks. So it's every Friday at 3, every 2 weeks. So it's this Friday at 3 is the next meeting. How the map is currently, or the draft that Ramiro did kind of to get the conversation started, was like from Steamboat down to Rochester.
Yeah, I walked through the proposal to Commissioner Messer, and I'm planning to walk through Commissioner Edwards right after lunch. We'll have a one-on-one
Okay.
to give you just a general idea of how that proposal was. And again, I wish I could have taken a picture because the staff took the hard copy of that. But,
I want to comment on that when I see the vice chair goes in.
Well, I just wanted to, this is moving fast and you're the boss, so, but I thought we should have the opportunity to share our feedback to you as
Yes,
we go through this.
please.
So, because I've been tasked with a bunch of informational presentations, so I've been hearing questions and concerns and putting a lot more thought into it. Because I just think that philosophically, when we get to that point of representation is one of the, I talk about 4 categories of benefit. One of them is representation. What does that mean? Like, why is it better representation to have 5 commissioners instead of 3? Like, I had to think more deeply about that. They talk about, well, per capita, it's, we were smaller, now we're bigger. So I think the way that works is if a commissioner has fewer core interest groups within a district, then that commissioner can develop deeper relationships with those core interests. And then that enhances the quality of understanding they can bring to the broader board discussion when there's an issue involving those core interests. So, for example, if we've got Squaxin Island, let's just take the tribes, that's an important relationship. If my district involves the Squaxin Island tribe, then, instead of being pulled in 3 directions and trying to remember the names of all the councils of 3 tribes, I can meet with Squaxin Island leadership every month, I can get to know every one of their council members, for example. When an issue comes up with Squaxin Island tribe, I can bring a much more nuanced perspective on what the issue is and what the solution might be to the board for consideration. Let's take cities, another big one. Drawing a stripe across the middle of the county that would involve, West Olympia and downtown Olympia and a piece of Tumwater and Lacey, like, that's not good. Like that's why, I mean, you're really balancing these fourth and fifth bullets, compact, but also maintaining communities of interest. So, what Ramiro showed me kind of had me with West Olympia and Tumwater. Okay, well, I can really get to know Tumwater in a much deeper way. I'll get to know the police chief. I'll get to know the fire chief. I'll get to know the council members better. I'll work, if a Tumwater, a Thurston County issue of conflict comes up, I will understand that better and help the board have a better, that's how representation can be better. So if we're drawing districts in a way that, South County is a great example. South County, that's an area of mutual interest. Well, think about that. If you drew a horizontal district all the way across South County from Rochester to Yelm, other than being kind of rural, I would argue that there's a totally different set of interests between Yelm. Yelm's got the Nisqually tribe, the Nisqually River, the bypass issues for I-5 during a disaster, all the in transportation projects. Rochester's got, Independence Valley and, Pocket Gopher and a direct relationship with Grays Harbor and the Chehalis tribe. And so, I would be thinking about trying to create districts that allow each commissioner to kind of hone in on a set of community interests. It doesn't just mean South County and North County. I think that's too superficial. I think it needs to look a little deeper than that. We definitely have a rural-urban kind of, division of a sense, but I think we're gonna have 5 districts. We can go deeper than that, and I would just hope that you guys would sort of think about that in terms of how do we actually get that better quality representation that we're talking about? Because I don't think, when I first started talking about this with voters, like, they didn't quite get it. Like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And I had to sort of think it through and explain to them why I thought it would be better. So that's just a kind of a consideration because, I think it was the county manager that told me that, somebody said something about, well, what if we just drew them, horizontal? And I was like, no, you're completely missing an opportunity to provide better quality representation if you do that.
But it will not be achievable in terms of meeting the objective, because there's absolutely no way that you can draw.
I don't think the law is really consistent with that, A, and B, I just think it would be an absolute missed opportunity to create a district that a commissioner can really dig into deeper and then bring that quality of the depth of right now the 3 of us are pulled so thin across the county and we barely even really recognize our districts because they run north to south, they're so big, we're all elected by the whole county. I mean, we really I don't feel like I bring, I know my neighborhood because I live there obviously, but do I really, am I able to really bring specialized knowledge and relationships and quality of discussion about things that relate to District 3? I think it's not happening in the way it could happen if we do this right. So those are just my 2 cents about that. Because all the other elements of why this is going to be good have nothing to do with the districts, right? Like Open Public Meeting Act and subcommittees and stability, institutional knowledge. That's all going to happen regardless of how you draw the districts. So when it comes to drawing the districts the best or right, it really comes down to this idea of the quality of representation. And that really has to boil down to how much we're putting on each commissioner's plate and how deep we can go in terms of our connection to the community.
Thank you.
I know you're balancing a million things, so I just want to make sure that's not forgotten.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I guess on follow up on that topic, the most extreme example I can think of is maybe the difference between the Evergreen College area, the college proper itself, and maybe Rochester or something. There's pretty different about those 2 philosophies in life. I'm curious, how does the 60,000 and then kind of do it within 200, I guess, is so. What's the big deal? Why is it so tight? What does it really matter? Are we putting perimeters around the process to the point that it makes it super difficult to accomplish the mission, I guess? So would I care if if I only had 58,000 and Ty had 62 or something like that, I mean, I can't imagine why I would care. It's relatively similar. I mean, how close do we have to be?
So the statute requires to achieve the 1/5 of the population.
I know, but I mean, it'll never be exact, and
It will
so
never be
what's the differentiation?
So the deviation that was discussed, it was at 200.
I know, but
That's a starting point.
why did you pick 200? Why not 2,000 or?
It was just a number. And I think the discussion of 2,000 was discussed, and I believe the group at this point thought that it was too much of a deviation.
What about 1%, 600?
So it could be. So I think
I think that's defendable.
it's just, as an objective, the 200 deviation. But I think at the time when they started drawing the lines, following the precincts, it could be an acceptable larger deviation. But again, this is just objective.
It's just a goal.
It's just a goal, an objective. Nothing has been set in stone yet.
Yeah, okay, I mean, this
Yeah.
kind of really bothers me when I start thinking like Ty. On the same wavelength.
Yeah. We set the 200, as a goal, like Ramiro said, because we're like trying to get everyone as close as possible to that 60,000. But, as population numbers actually start coming up in the maps, right? And we haven't really seen that breakdown yet on what it's actually going to look and what the movement's going to be, because we haven't had that breakdown of like, this is how much this district has compared to this one and this one and this one. Once that starts, that number might be like, it's probably gonna have to be 2,000 for it to make sense.
Isn't the maximum for a precinct 1,500? And so wouldn't that be the right cutoff? Because you're limiting yourself, when precincts are up to 1,500 people, it may be impossible to get within 200.
Yeah, there's some precincts.
Without breaking a precinct, which is.
Less population.
Oh, less, there's lots of less, but I don't think there's more.
There's not more, when it hits 1,500 is when Mary splits them into two.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that could be some feedback that we can bring to the
So-
group, but I think the conversation on the deviation on population, it will get to the point when we see some lines
I'm
drawn.
kind of right there with Commissioner Menzer on this topic. I'm not too worried about, I don't know if it will work or won't, obviously I want it to work, but that precinct thing, that might be the break-off point, rather than 2,000, just an arbitrary number, but a real number would be 1,500, because it's already laid out in the process that 1,500, I mean, I can't imagine, I'm gonna care if you've got 1,500 more than I do, or I've got 1,500
Well, within 5 minutes,
more
it
than you
changes,
do.
right?
Yes, and that's
Because
the
people
other
are
part of
moving
it,
in, moving
because
out, new
people are
housing
always
development.
moving, and this is only gonna be good for 10 years, and then it's gonna change again anyway, so when there's a new census, so let's not lock ourselves into too tight of a restriction and then consequently make it more difficult than it has to be. That's all, that's where I think Ty have articulated the situation real well.
No, it's all good feedback and fair comments. And just to reiterate, this is just objectives the redistrict committee laid out, just to begin the conversation. Because if the deviation among districts, one could be, amongst the others could be, more than the 200, but it's just an objective. It's just to begin the conversation. It could be 1,500, it could be 2,000, and I think.
Okay, let's just not get locked in.
I don't believe that should be taken as a set in stone, as a directive in a way.
Yeah, and we did have some members of the public come
Yeah,
by
they-
and they were
members of
asking,
the-
there were some interesting questions that they have afterwards, after, we did our meeting, and we had Amy Evans, who's the other board commissioner, she also came to that meeting to kind of see how the initial conversation was going to go, so just I guess an invitation, you are welcome to attend the meetings and kind of see how the conversation's going, if that's,
If you plan to attend, let me know because.
but
we
it
need
has to be added to the master
to the master
calendar.
calendar.
But, just,
Tell me again, the meetings are the such and such Friday of,
It's every other Friday that we agree. And so
This
our next meeting is this Friday at 3 p.m.
All I can say is I don't think I'm a stickler about anything of it.
So
I just want.
Commissioner, after this meeting, you and I have a check-in.
Okay.
I will walk you through with the map as to what the proposal was, so you have an idea.
It's not high on my concern because I want it just to work. I'm not gonna be selfish about it. Well, I want this or that or anything.
As Commissioner Mejia stated, we needed to keep you on the same district as you were elected, as soon as you live, so that create but I think it's, a good starting point, as Commissioner Mejia stated.
yeah, I think, because we were going by that, I think where Ramiro was like, okay, like so we were kind of like, okay, I think he lives around this area, and I think he lives around this area. And it's like, and I live in this area, and Commissioner Joe Downing lives like right over here, and Commissioner Menster lives like right over here, and so we
you and I
were,
are close.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you're the easiest, and then for, like, after that, it was like
You know,
mine, and then yours was
the other thing to think about maybe is there such a thing as, because I remember something being said about several commissioners will have 4-year terms, maybe somebody else will have 3-year terms, somebody else 2-year term, I don't know. So we don't have that lack of continuity in the end.
Right, so the statute is very prescriptive.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, because
Does it break that
it's
out?
to the point of District 4, Commissioner will be elected for 1 year. District 5 will be elected to 3 years.
You're gonna draw that out of a hat, which one's 4 and which one's 5?
So, my understanding, there is no prescriptive on that, so that's the decision that you probably need to make, which one is District 4 and which one is District 5. And for talking purposes, I drew a number 4 and number 5, it's just, no pun intended on this one.
The incumbents.
But that would be really a conversation that you need to approve what the number of that.
But the incumbents would serve out their existing term.
No, you don't have any changes on you.
Ours doesn't have any change, but the two new ones, one's 3 and one's 1?
One is 1, District 4 is 1, and District 5 is 3.
3.
And that will align to the staggered election.
But that will be, so if the voters approve this in November 8th, that is the day on which the district numbers get
The elections needs to,
cemented.
the elections needs to.
Even if I lost the election and I would then not be living in that district, or I would not be the commissioner in District 3.
How about if we had a district?
So it's gonna be 3, like my district will be 3 no matter what happens in my elections, what you're
Your
saying.
number doesn't change your district.
Because 3 cemented, because I'm
The
the.
geographical area of your district will change.
So 4, okay, so, but we have the latitude to say that's 4 and that's 5, or that's 4 and that's 5.
That's my understanding, but we need to confirm
So
that.
the boundaries don't need to be set the day the voters vote on.
No.
Going to 5.
No.
Right.
So the way the schedule is, that we have somewhat of a reaching a tentative agreement by the 2 legislative authorities by the end of October, and then we'll hold.
and so the
Depending on
schedule
the-
is right
yeah,
here.
Depending on the results of the election, then if that election returns positive in terms of supporting these 5 commissioners, then the board needs to set a public hearing. But at least we will have the boundaries in place.
So I'm seeing this, we would be potentially approving it on December 2nd.
Yep.
And that's the current board at that point.
Let me throw out another wrinkle on that, just to think about. Okay, so, and I'm not predicting anything, I'm just saying, so a commissioner loses an election, but now we've got a new district over here. I don't know, you can move into that district and run for 1 year or something like that. Or maybe I could quit my commission seat 1 year early and move next door and have, and be in the next district and then run for a 1-year term or, I don't know. So I don't know. Well, I'm just kind of curious how that would all work. It gets pretty, it could be complicated.
So I have to, if I don't win, District 3, my opponent lives in Rochester, and I don't think any map that we would draw is gonna put us in the same district. So you have, so District 3 would have to change to the Southern District.
Yes,
Right?
that would be a nuisance that we need to redraw the districts.
Yeah. Basically, your district would, the geographical area of District 3 would kind of change because the,
That'd
but
be
we
a
would
hell of a
have
way
to fit.
win your argument.
But then we would have to make sure, I mean, I think the whole map would change because again, it goes into 2 commissioners living in that same district, so Amy Evans and,
right,
you know,
Amy.
if your opponent were to win, then we would have to draw.
Because it's the joint
Yeah, okay, I got you.
conversation with.
That's not about me at that point, it's about Port Commissioner and
Right.
County Commissioner.
To
And
kinda
that's
make it
gonna
all
make
fit.
it difficult.
Yeah, so then.
Right, but, and you're right, if you lose the election, for instance, and the new commissioner lives south, that needs to be redrawn before we submit it to the other.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, there was a lot of nuances, so, District 4, for 1 year, then that commissioner will run at the same time that you will be up for re-election. And District 5 will coincide with the cycle that you're going through. That's how.
Sounds pretty complicated to me. There's a lot of things that could happen.
It's a lot of things, but I think it's good to have this conversation at this point, because having these conversations after the November 8th election.
So you might want to set those by districts so they're 10% fluctuation or something, maybe really give yourself some room to move or something,
Yeah.
because it'll fill in eventually, or, you know, whatever, 5%, I don't know.
So, no, I think this is great. Maybe we can have this as a standing item like every 2 weeks, like kind of, because this feedback, you know, it is useful. Like even though I'm sitting on that, it is useful to hear kind of like thoughts and community murmurings and so I appreciate it.
And we should have a map, a draft map as a result of this coming meeting, and I will share with all of you.
Okay. So moving on, that was redistricting update. Number 2 is Supreme Living update.
There's nothing for you to do at this point, Commissioners, it's just for me to keep you up to date. Last week, you received a briefing from Rio London related to what the program the state has related to this particular topic. Here in your attachment, I have some of the steps that we have taken, going back to June 30th, when we received a letter related to this particular audit having to place in the Tenino area. Then we follow up with a letter stating that they need to perhaps submit a special use permit. The result of that conversation, their attorney submitted a legal opinion related to their activities. That current legal opinion is being reviewed by the prosecuting attorney's office. And we'll continue to have this conversation. So that's the status update that we have for you. And again, they submitted a legal opinion stating that perhaps they do not need a permit here in the county. From my humble point of view, I strongly disagree on that perspective. But again, we just need to go through due diligence to review their legal standings and what we need to take the next steps. So this is just to bring you up to date. I think you're tracking on the status of this, but also since this has been an important item for the board as activities evolve and perhaps the next steps materialize, a little more in detail, I will bring you up to speed. If it's not next week, then the next couple of weeks. Did I miss anything, Josh?
No, I think that's appropriate. Timeline is our prosecuting attorney's office is asking for a week or two to review the legal findings.
Can you repeat again? We missed the first part.
I think that the overview was great, Ramiro. The legal counsel, in terms of timeline, is asking for at least 2 weeks to review the legal findings from the potential applicant. So an update probably wouldn't be forthcoming to the board for another 2 weeks.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Edwards?
I guess my concern with this that Josh gave us on Thursday, are they trying to claim they're not gonna be sex offenders here? I mean, it looks like they're similar in function to an adult family home. I mean, there'd be a heck of a big difference between running something for challenged individuals or adult family home versus a sex offender operation where the community is really a threat. So that's under 8.6 of 22. Is there something amiss here that they're not going to be sex offenders? They're going to be something else?
That is the statement provided on the legal opinion. So we need
That they are not going to be sex offenders?
That is what we received in terms of description of the usage. So we have no way to confirm that other than we need to review the legal perspective.
Well,
Just think that's their claim.
So I cannot conclude on that assessment, Commissioner, because we need to investigate. I think we need to follow through to determine what the actual use is going to be.
okay, for me, it's a big difference between an adult assisted living home or something like that versus sex offenders. To me, the sex offenders are the worst of the worst that we can put in a community where there are potential victims living close by. And so on expanding from that, I'm wondering if we couldn't move forward with, I don't know, possibly an injunction having to do with, if this is sex offenders going out there, that is kind of in complete, it counterdicts the Growth Management Act. They're going to try and help those individuals. I think that's the wrong term to use, but there's no way to self-help and get back on the norm if they don't have public transportation, treatment, all the other things that they claim will help these people. And so I think that if we filed for an injunction and also claiming that it's an unfunded mandate, you take and put 7 sex offenders out in a community. These people are the worst of the worst, and we ought to have a deputy sheriff living there with them. On duty 24 hours a day or something. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to be a commissioner that 2 or 3 months from now, after there's been some horrific crime committed on the community out there by one of these people, and say, oh, gee, I wish we would have done this, or we should have thought about that. I want to do everything that I can to protect the community, and that is the goal that I have. I don't care if they can't find a place for these people to stay or not. They can put them on a boat as far as I'm concerned. But I do not want these folks living in our communities where they can gain access to victims. And if you had ever been to as many crime scenes as I have and seen as many damaged lives as I have by sex offenders in my career in law enforcement, you would understand where I'm coming from. And I don't know what it'll take, maybe a motion or a second or something from one of my seatmates to have legal start looking into this immediately to see if we don't have some recourse to prevent this stupidity from the state mandating that we accept this, because I'm not willing to accept this and just roll over. That's not where I'm at. So I don't know, I mean, I'd look to my seatmates and see, it takes, 2 thumbs up to get legal to start reviewing things on that thought process, not whether or not we agree with their attorney's review of what they think is appropriate. I want our own folks to be looking into this. Is there any way to stop this horrendous mistake that's about to happen?
That's exactly what the the prosecuting attorney's office is doing.
Yeah, but they're not looking at it that I know of, from my perspective of getting an injunction, unfunded mandate, something to stop this from taking place. I'm not looking for a compromise. I'm looking to stop this and force it under the Growth Management Act, where the whole intent of growth management, provide services to the masses. Well, there's a mass of them right there. Anyway, so I don't know what it'll take. I guess I'll look to my seatmates and see if anybody else is willing to push for that type of review to see if we can't stop the state from doing this. That's where I'm at.
I mean, I'm, I would like to see, what all of our options are, and what is it that we can do. We had the conversation with Leah last week, and she kind of presented some information to us, and she was gonna reach out to, I believe it's DSHS.
Yeah, she's organizing that briefing to the board.
But I would like to see kind of like what are all of our options under the law, like what, I know if there's a permit, then it has to go through the process of the hearings examiner, and then it comes to the board if it's appealed. But, how about if they don't need a permit, and then, so I would like to see all of our options and what recourses, as a board do we have, if any. So, because, this is something that I don't think, we've had before, and I kind of want to see what all of our options are.
That's what we're exploring on this.
But this is kind of it's revising the legal opinion in terms of whether they need a permit or not.
Developing next steps, but also let me provide a different perspective. I believe the right of any property owner in Thurston County is to go through a permit process to change the use of their property. And I think that's an inherent right that every resident of Thurston County has. So if somebody goes through a process of submitting a permit application to change the use of a particular property, with all the respect, I think they have the right for a due process.
But it's my understanding that what they're stating is that they don't need.
Yeah, and that is what we
a
need to
special
clarify.
use permit.
So my
So that,
humble opinion is they do need a special use permit. They need to go through a process.
that's the legal piece that's
Yeah,
being
so,
sorted
and that's
out.
what-
Josh has had his hand up.
Yep, Ramiro, if you'd like to finish, please do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ramiro, you're in the middle of a thought. Would you like to continue the thought?
No, that's the point is, at this point is we're looking as to what are the next steps that we need to do as a result of actually reviewing from the legal point of view, their legal perspective. And I obviously am not an attorney, but I do believe they should be submitting a special use permit to go through a process like anybody else. I don't think they should be in the position to put themselves above a process the local government has. But that's my humble point of view.
So thank you for that, County Manager. What I would say is a couple of things. just for the viewing public and the commissioners to be aware, there is no activity happening currently at this time. This is a conversation with Supreme Living about their intended use of the property. And so what CPED, we have a very narrow scope in this, is to determine whether or not their potential intended use falls within a permitted use. And that's what our legal counsel is currently reviewing. As Robin and the county manager have stated, we believe that they do fall within a special use permit, but our guidelines need to align with the TCC, the Thurston County Code, as well as RCW. And so there's certain things that are listed within the SUP, the special use permit, whether it's adult family home or secure correctional facility transition. Can't flip that around. But those are the things that legal counsel is looking at. And we need to have a couple of weeks for legal counsel to see if CPED has a defensible position to request a permit for the potential intended use. At that point, I think that there are places where the commissioners should consider continuing to talk about this. But injunctions and all those items are not within CPED's purview. Our limited review is whether or not we can require a permit of them. If a use or activity does begin before we've completed this conversation, that will be a different conversation with our compliance unit within CPED. So I just want to make it clear that there's no activity currently happening at the site and that we're working to better understand what the intended use is. And finally, if we can require a permit application for that intended use. Helpful?
Mr. Mentor, do you have any questions, comments?
No.
So
I do. I want to follow up on.
Go ahead, sir.
My position is not to wait for Josh's group to do the review. And I know it's not Josh's purview and his group to seek an injunction, for an example. I mean, we don't even know what's coming exactly. I want to have the ability to have a preemptive strike, so to speak, and review, do we have any ability to stop something like this? And based on what? Well, maybe it's on unfunded mandate. Maybe it's because we don't have we got the smallest number of law enforcement officers per 1,000 in the whole state. So I think that should give us concern. So when we're not going to have the ability to monitor these knotheads, we're just not, ever. And unless we double the size of the sheriff's office. And I don't think the state's going to want to pay for the doubling the size of the sheriff's office to where we can adequately handle it. But maybe they would. And if they want to do that, okay. But let's start looking. Let's not wait chronographically so that this, and this, oh, we get down here and they're ready to move in tomorrow. And oh, well, let's look at an injunction. No, I want to look at that injunction right now to see what it would take that we might prevail on stopping this kind of horrendous mistake. That's what I'm wanting to do. Takes another thumbs up to make it happen, to at least be looking into this.
Well, I'm open to looking into it, so.
Okay. Can we do that, County Manager?
I'm always in favor of knowing our legal options.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking for.
I can tell you unfunded mandate's not gonna work, but if there's something else, I'm not a land use attorney, so maybe there else is some other mechanism.
Yeah, we'll work with Josh and Travis to see what options are.
I mean, above and beyond the whole permit thing.
We heard you, Commissioner.
Oh, okay.
We heard you.
Okay.
So, and are you talking about this site in particular or anywhere in Thurston County?
Anywhere in the unincorporated area of Thurston County is my concern, not just this particular site.
Okay.
Anywhere where they're gonna dump the rejects of society on our community because we don't have the resources to deal with it. That's my concern.
Okay, 11:42, I know Commissioner Messer has to step out at noon, so is there any of these items that can be moved to next week, County Manager?
I think probably the dangerous trees, maybe.
Could move it to next week.
Okay, so we're gonna move that to next week. Okay,
The other item, yeah, okay.
no, I was just gonna say, we have a letter from Philip Burgess on the closed session.
Yeah, this is more of, I'm not expecting you to take any position on this request. I just want to make sure that that is stated, you have received this letter. And this is from Philip Burgess, from Philip Burgess law firm. And this is related to the proposed expansion of Hopkins District, Ditch District. And as you may be aware, this is a little bit of a long history related to the Hopkins District, Ditch District, which they have taken a couple of steps to assess, implement fees on the preserved as development outside of their boundaries. And that preserved particular developments within the city of Tumwater, municipal boundaries. So it was, I believe, early in July, they were planning to have a public hearing. This is stated on this document. The Heather Burgess submitted to the board, where the ditch district was contemplating expanding the assessment, not necessarily the boundaries. And I'm not here to provide a legal perspective on this, by the way. And so they suspended that public hearing, which was the first step for them to implement those assessments. Fast forward, this letter from Heather Burgess was in preparation or leading to the public hearing that was held this past Saturday on the same terms. And in fact, from the previous public hearing, they expanded those properties. They could be assessed by this particular request by the ditch district. So this public hearing was held on Saturday. It lasted for 6 hours, and they continue the public hearing to this Friday to begin at 9 a.m. I got some feedback that perhaps there was a lot of objections to this particular action by the district, by the property owners. As far as I understand, the ditch district commissioners went on one by one each of the objections, just to dismiss every single objections by an action individually. So this continues to be an issue. I believe there is some procedural issues that perhaps this may be part of Heather's letter, and that is procedural issues that I'm not here to either verbalize or provide you a perspective. But this letter requests the board to consider two actions. One is for the board to refer this matter to the boundary review board and she cites a chapter in here. That's a little bit of an interesting request, but it's at least my understanding of the involvement of the boundary review board and the role of the county commissioners. It's like any other annexation where you have seen a formal request for annexation, either by a jurisdiction or a special use district. Is a formal request about this special district or the jurisdiction. Only then, I believe, the board has the ability to invoke jurisdiction where you refer the matter to the boundary review board. I don't know if the board has the option to be preemptive.
I was gonna say, it seemed like they'd have to do it.
Right.
And it's not spelled out in the letter that there's a right to preemptive.
Right, so that's, I'm just.
Let me just follow up on that a little bit. So what about if the city of Tumwater is a subject of this annexation of property? Wouldn't they have the ability to request that of the boundary review board? Or is the boundary review only for us?
No, is I believe for the county commissioners to go through this process. Because if, and I don't know if the thing is, this district, at least this one, they're not planning to increase their boundary lines. That is the key issue. My understanding, they're not planning to do so, but Heather is suggesting that perhaps they should, and the board should send them to the boundary review board. But if the ditch district, plans to expand the boundaries, which includes the city of Stormwater and the county, then the city of Stormwater will have an option, obviously, as part of the process.
So when the statute says they can expand its role of properties, that's different than expanding their boundaries?
That's my understanding.
Those are two separate legal statuses?
Right.
This was also
Kind of
brought up.
meaningless distinction, really. And that's the whole point of the district, is they can impose the fees.
Yeah, and the request of this letter is for you to consider suspending the district's operations as a whole. And
What authority?
well, under the same authority, we're contemplating suspending the operations of the Black Lake Special Use District. Is it
I
familiar?
have a follow-up on this.
So this was discussed at the mayor's meeting as well. So what we heard from the city of Tumwater is that they're tracking this. They have also received a lot of public comment in regards to this. So just kind of like a heads up to county commissioners about it.
And commissioners, at this point, my recommendation is no action, just to be clear.
I have a concern that I haven't heard this morning yet. And that is when I was presented this information in this room by members of that ditch district with, I think, some maps and some material they had. The commissioners seemed very knowledgeable about the RCWs that reflect how to do this. And one of those RCWs was that the prosecuting attorney in Thurston County was to be their legal representation. And as far as I know, that RCW has not changed. I mean, I haven't reviewed it myself because I probably wouldn't be able to figure it out. It was put in place back in the late 1800s or early 1900s. And I would like to have our prosecuting representative or the prosecuting attorney, who is our legal representative. I mean, I think there's a place for him to fit in here as to not only giving us guidance on what we can or cannot do, but whether or not there's been some change in the law from those early RCWs that were quoted by those commissioners from the ditch district, that it was in fact the county attorney's responsibility to represent their positions.
And in fact, that particular request was made and the prosecuting attorneys declined that.
Yeah, so I spoke with Prosecutor Thunheim about that request because they met with me too and they brought that up.
Oh, okay.
So I asked Prosecutor Thunheim about it. I was like, can you explain that RCW? And he said that they had done a formal letter to them. It was something that his office looked into, and it was something that he had the prerogative, I guess is the word, to either decide to either do it or not do it. And he decided that he would not do it. One of the reasons was because there would be a huge conflict of interest with, because he represents the county in all aspects. And so he decided to keep.
Probably because part of the request was us to give back stormwater money, and that would create.
And the ditch district has their own attorney, by the way. They have secure legal counsel. Not from the county, independent.
I would envision somewhere down the road, when there's conflicting RCWs and stuff, that there might be litigation going after the fees and such.
Well,
This whole
I
thing,
think
maybe,
that
so
might be
that's farther down the road.
That's farther down the road. And again, I'm not asking you to take any particular action or position on this request. It's just to make sure you have the opportunity to discuss this among yourselves.
Okay.
What we have received. More to come.
More to come.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
11:52, we'll go into closed session for how long?
It will be only 10 minutes.
Okay, so, and then,
Is there a closed session link? If I have
It's the
to.
same. It's the same. You can
Okay.
join via Zoom.
I can join, so I'll probably have to exit halfway through, but I'll continue to listen.
So we'll be in closed session, per RCW 42.30.140, subsection 4A, collective bargaining sessions, or B, that portion of a meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopting the strategy or decision to be taken by the governing body during the course of any collective bargaining. Sheriff's Office, Captain's Union contract, Commissioner's action may follow. We'll be there until, in closed session until 12:15.
No, it wouldn't be that long. It will not be that long. Whatever you like.
12:15, just in case. You always say it won't be that long and then carry on conversation, so. We're live. Thank you. We are back from closed session. We were in closed session for RCW 42.30.140 subsection 4A, collective bargaining sessions, or B, that portion of a meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken by the governing body during the course of any collective bargaining. Sheriff's Office, Captain Union's contract. It is 12:03 p.m. No commissioners action follows, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.